welcome back to part two of our interview with Mr. Jones Watches, and we have Crispin Jones with us today. Hello again.
Hello again.
Now, we had a question, and you were talking about in-house design, and you kind of answered the question I did have. So I wanted to sort of just modify it slightly. You have obviously, you work with some external designers, and now you do a lot of in-house as well. And my question was, excuse me, on the Perfectly Useless Afternoon, Christoph Devos is actually name-checked on the watch. I know with the Sun and Moon, it was Fanny Short who worked on that. My question is then, when do you decide to put the name of the artist on the back, which you do for the Perfectly Useless Afternoon, but they're not on the other watches?
So generally the ones with no name is because I designed them.
Oh, okay.
Like that's kind of the rule of thumb. So I guess naming the designs on the back, I guess came from like IKEA, the furniture store, where I always thought it was really powerful. When you walk around, there's a photo of the designer. Like IKEA actually do a really good job of acknowledging the individual designers who work on stuff. And I just thought that was kind of like a powerful thing just to have that individual name. But I guess also I was kind of mindful, like at the start, Mr. Jones Watches meant I design everything. I'm Mr. Jones, that's what it means. And then as we started collaborating with other people, I thought, well, it's important that there's no ambiguity. Like it's not like I'm pretending I designed all this stuff, but a bunch of other people did it.
Yeah.
And then I guess at a certain point, there's a kind of I guess, okay, last laugh. The William Andrews, the comedian, is not named. The collaborations on that series were more like sort of dialogues. I still did the actual design work. There was like input and collaboration from him, but he wasn't like an artist who created the artwork that we then produced.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So whereas Christoph is he's a children's book illustrator and author. Like that's his main thing. He also teaches fine art, and that was kind of he did the artwork. We fed back notes, and he revised it and stuff. But he was the kind of creator of that. So therefore, it felt right that he was acknowledged.
Yeah.
I guess it was. You're making it sound like it was kind of a considered decision, and it just wasn't. It was just like it seemed obvious that you'd name. I'm trying to think who.
I didn't know if there was a policy of, depending on if it's just solely them. I mean, and I guess then the question that wasn't on my sheet, but is, do they approach you? Do you approach them 50-50? And my next question, and I'll add the next question in, then you can answer all in one big hit. Because watch enthusiasts, myself, anybody could submit a design to you. I don't know whether there's any other company that does this. On your website, you can actually go in, submit a design. There's even some little templates there, and it tells you all the processes. I mean, how do these watches come about? And the last part of the question, you can remember them all. Which watches have actually been designed through that, through the website itself?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
lots to take in there, and I'll repeat them if you forget any of those.
No, okay, like starting from the end first, because that's the bit I can remember. The form on the website kind of came about because we just got a lot of unsolicited submissions.
Yeah.
Like we've always had quite a lot of unsolicited submissions, but they tend to be not stuff we can use for a bunch of reasons that are really obvious to us, but clearly weren't to people outside the company. So we thought, why don't we put up like some kind of guidance so people at least have a framework to work towards? So we're not just sending out like half a dozen times a week, basically the same email. Because I guess the thing on the guidance that's really important is there needs to be some sort of narrative to the design. And I feel like a lot of the designs that we would just reject out of hand are sort of pictorial. They're sort of visual puns on things, time telling, watches. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but things like rather than writing the numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you write mathematical formulas that result in those numbers. Yeah, it's cute. Like a bunch of people have done it, but it's just not us because there's no narrative there. It's not like a coherent thing. But also just articulating that idea of what's important to us is a pictorial design, so an image where two elements move and those point to the time. When someone said that, like articulate that, you're like, excuse me, you're like, oh yeah, it's obvious. Like I get it now. I guess the other one that we probably need to update the guidance on, that we get a lot of, because we do those jump hour watches with like a numeral for the hour and minute, we get a lot of submissions where they're basically, it's like a digital watch. It's like hours and minutes side by side in some kind of image. And those are really problematic because the minute hand is moving constantly. So when they send a submission, it's always on like 5:25. So it looks perfect. But in reality, it will line up for like 15 seconds and then the minute will start moving out of alignment. And actually, you need to factor that in and work with, okay, the majority of time, it's not going to be perfectly aligned. So how do you sort of cope with that? So that's the kind of the background to like why there is a submission form. And, we enjoy like looking at them. It actually has a sort of training function within the company. So my background is fine art, but then I also taught at postgraduate level, different design colleges, different design courses. Like I'm very experienced at doing crits, doing reviews of people's work and analyzing it, commenting on it, like saying this part is working, this part is not working. But that's like a muscle you need to develop. And actually, the way a lot of the online submissions are used in the company is to train other people to do that. So how would you respond to this? Like, is there merit in this design? Is there not merit? Why is there not merit? It can't just be, I don't like the design, it doesn't work for me. It needs to be articulated, like, okay, it doesn't have enough of a narrative element, or pictorially it's not interesting enough, or whatever. So to have a sort of function for that. The threshold to get through an unsolicited submission to actually a watch design is really high. So there are instances, and there are like key people, like key watches we do where there are unsolicited submissions, but it's relatively rare. Like I would say our approaching other people versus us working with people who've approached us is probably 80-20. And that's just on people who are outside the company. We have a lot of people from fine art, different creative backgrounds within the company who we encourage to do designs. Like there's a thing in our employee handbook on how much we support that and how much we want to encourage people to do that. So arguably, if you're in the company, you've got a much better chance of like getting through that threshold of like the barrier. But okay, the people who are unsolicited artists who we've worked with, Christoph Devos was an unsolicited submission. I never met him. He sent me an email saying, I am a children's book illustrator from Belgium. I was wondering if I could submit some designs. Someone had bought him a Cyclops watch, like a model we used to make, but we no longer make. Someone had bought in that. He was like, cool, you do like interesting stuff. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, cool. So we didn't actually have the submission guidelines. I might have had like an email template that I shared with him, but I'm not even sure I had that. But so then, yeah, cool. Like a month later, he sent through this really comprehensive document with like several different designs, one of which was Perfectly Useless Afternoon, so the swimming pool watch, which was fairly close to how it was actually produced for the limited edition. Another was the Perfectly Useless Morning, the like person lying in the sort of forest. And there were another couple that we never actually produced. But he was unusual in that he submitted this document. He said, for the Perfectly Useless Afternoon, he said, I found this quote by a Chinese philosopher that said, if you learn to spend your time in a perfectly useless way, you've really learned how to live. Or I'm paraphrasing, but the sentiment was kind of that. So right from the start, there was like, okay, there's some like thought behind it. There's some meaning to this design more than you've just thought, if I was like top down on a guy in a swimming pool, then his foot could become ours, which is, I think, the approach that a lot of people take where the design falls down, because it's like, it's not important to know that's what Christoph was thinking about this Chinese philosopher. But if you do know it, it enriches it, and it gives a sort of overall meaning to the thing that's, I think, is really important. Certainly it's really important to us when we're considering designs. So another is Honorio De Piro, who did Number Cruncher and Monster Melter and various other designs over the years. We used to have a small shop in a place called the Oxo Tower in London, which is all different sort of designer maker kind of businesses. But he came to that, and we laugh about it now, but he thought that was our workshop, like this exhibition that we put on in this huge gallery space. So he was like blown away. He was like, wow, they're a really big company. And in 2017, we were tiny. Like I think there was 6 or 7 members of staff. But he submitted a bunch of designs, which honestly we didn't really like, but we kind of pushed back and we'd looked at his sort of portfolio online, and there was some other, he'd done these illustrations of these monsters where he'd hand drawn them and then he'd place them in sort of photographic sort of cityscapes. We thought that's a really nice sort of mix of photographic and hand drawn illustration. So we kind of pushed him to develop those, which ultimately became Number Cruncher. But Honorio, I always pay tribute to. Honorio is really great to work with because he takes feedback really well. Like some people take feedback really badly, or just ignore it, or just do whatever they wanted to do anyway. Honorio, when we give notes, when we give like feedback on the design, really takes it on board, really wants to understand what you're like the part that you're really honing in on. And then we'll do like 10 new versions that are all like him trying to like work through those suggestions.
Right. So I was going to lead on from there. So I think we have established he started the company back in 2007, but maybe in 2005. But
I mean, yeah, it's like a grey area.
Yeah. So basically, from the start, what would you say is the most sort of iconic watch that you would say has established your company? That's what Mr. Jones is. What would be the one that you would say, this is us, this has set us off on our way?
I mean, in 17 years, like there are different answers for different points along the way. So, like the Remember You Will Die, the Accurate was our first, that was like our signature for a long time. And that was the one that people really knew. I mean, in like a modest way, it's not like people in the street knew that, but you know, people who knew our brand, that was the one watch that they always kind of reference. The Last Love tattoo that you mentioned, so like the skull watch, but with the tattoo design, but that was in 2010 or late 2009 that came out. So that then for a number of years, it was absolutely the best seller, and it was like the iconic watch for us. And then I would say the Perfectly Used This Afternoon, the Christoph Devos design, when that came out in 2019, that really became the thing that everyone knows us for. Stanley's making his presence known.
Hello, Stanley.
We
haven't seen him
introduce.
yet.
No,
there he is.
He's been asleep. You can look at the camera. Hello.
And how many T-shirts do you have him on these days?
I mean, there's only one Stanley T-shirt, to be fair. That started as a sort of in-house joke. So there are various dogs that come to the workshop, and we thought it'd be cute if we actually were talking about like if Stanley ran a business, what would it be? And we said it'd be like a hot dog business because A, he's a sausage dog, and B, he loves food. So it would have to be a food-based business. But then we started doing that with the other dogs in the workshop. So then they became like these 4 fictitious dog-based businesses that were kind of worked up. And then we had the shop in Neal Street, which I understand you visited. Like one of the things when we were sort of fitting that out was the sense that if it's just watches in there, it kind of like we're a watch brand that doesn't really sell to people who love watches. We're a watch brand that sells to people who maybe don't wear a watch, or we're kind of different from a normal watch brand. And we had the sense that if you look through the window and you just saw a line of watches, a lot of those people are not going to come in because they're going to think, well, it's not for me. Watch is not really my thing. So we actually put the T-shirts in the shop to kind of soften it and encourage people to kind of come in who might not otherwise come in, because they might think, they do T-shirts and watches, they probably do like clothes in the back or something, I don't know, but it gets them through the door. So, but the T-shirts have become kind of their own thing now. Like we try to get most of the artists who work on a watch design to work on a T-shirt design, and we're trying to sort of tighten that up a bit now. So it became a bit. Actually, I'm seeing behind me the Jacqueline Colley hanging up. Like that's an example of, it's not exactly what we want to do. It's kind of her watch design printed on a T-shirt, and it's not as interesting for us as like the funny narrative of like, what if Stanley ran a business? So we're trying to make them a bit more kind of involved.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Come on, we've seen one dog. Where's your dog?
Come on, we have to introduce
them to each
other.
Oh, here.
Now I'm
Oh,
going to
there
stop for a
he
short dog break.
is.
Here we go.
Oh,
Hi,
Yeah.
Dukey.
Stanley's looking everywhere but at the screen. Look at the screen. What's that dog?
See, on this channel, you don't just get watches, you also get dogs. Look at that. There's not many channels that do that.
He's listening. He knows Mick's voice. So he's wondering what he is.
Oh,
You're all right, aren't you? Good boy. So I suppose the next question was, so you had the collaboration with Christopher Ward, which, according to Mick, was very out of the blue. He was shocked you didn't tell him. So, yeah, so it was so well received in the watch community. We're wondering how did it come about for you? And do you have any other sort of collaborations in the background that you might want to maybe let loose on us? Of course, up to yourself. But yeah, I was just wondering how that might have come about for you and what you might think of in the future with them.
yeah, sure. Like, so originally, like our link to Chris Ford came about because for the Sphinx watch, we bought their jump power module from them. So I'm not sure I'm going to get the years right, but we knew that they did like a jump hour watch. We'd done a bunch of jump hour watches that we're using the Seagull made jump hour movement. And one of our frustrations with that is that the jump hour disc is not concentric. It's like a fixed size, and it hits the pinion that holds the minute, and so it's like really fixed, which means the numerals are always like smaller than we'd like them to be. So we saw Chris Ford developed their JJ01 module that fitted on a ETA 28, 24 type movement and did a big concentric seconds disc. I dug around on the Christopher Ward website and found Christopher Ward himself's email address, which they used to just have the emails on there because they were pretty open. And I thought, I just mail him and say, we're Mr. Jones Watches, you probably don't know us, we're this little brand. Would you sell us the module? So this was back when Christopher Ward himself was still part of the company. He replied and said, yeah, cool, I'm in London. Can I come in tomorrow? We'll have a chat. I was like, all right, cool. Bit faster than I thought. But he came in and visited us at the Oxo Tower shop and just sort of talked through and said, and actually at that time, I think they were discontinuing the Jump Hour line that they'd done. But he said, we sell it to some other brands. I don't think it's a secret, but they did sort of sell it on to different companies. If it is a secret, that's not the Chris Ford module. That's something totally different. And he said, yeah, cool. Like, this is the price. Like, this is because we only wanted to order like 25 or 30 because, for us, it was a really high price point, relative to what we normally do. So we only wanted to do it as like a little thing as this sort of halo product. So that was the initial sort of link to them. And then later, Chris Ford himself left the company, but Mike France, when he was setting up the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers, he got in touch and invited me to those early meetings. So I met him for the first time then, and also Peter, who's the other like founder member of Christopher Ward. And yeah, we got on well with them. Like I always kind of respected what Chris Ford were doing. Like they didn't have to make a jump hour module. Like for sure, that was like harder and more complicated than they needed to do. But I kind of respected that they'd gone down that route. And yeah, Mike France sent me an email out of the blue saying he was on some like business trip and he was like jet lagged and he was like, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was just thinking on the flight over, why don't we do something with Mr. Jones Watches and like, are you up for it? Like literally that was the email. I was like, yeah. I mean, I was really happy. Like I thought, we can look up to Chris Ford. They're like really an iconic sort of brand in the British watchmaking scene. They're so successful. They're so like they've grown to such a position and stuff. We're really proud to be asked. So we talked about it a bit with them, and from quite early on, they were like, we want you to do something with the moon phase watch because we think that's quite pictorial and that would map to your stuff quite well. From our side, right from the start, we said, what would be important for us is that we do all the fabrication of the components. So we'll do the design, we'll do the fabrication, and then you do the assembly. You can sell it on your website. Because there was some, initially we were like, maybe we each take half and we each sell it. And they were really straightforward as well. They said, look, we both track our costs going into the project. We get our costs out, and then we split whatever money is left down the middle. I was like, cool. And honestly, there's never been any contract. It's entirely on like a handshake. There's like a lot of trust on both sides.
Wow.
But it was, and like we took on the project and we took on fabricating the components ourselves because we knew that that would challenge the production staff. Like it wasn't like a secret. Like we discussed it with them and we were like, this is a really like an opportunity for us to sort of step up our production and to work with someone else's components and to work with, actually, because all their assemblies in Switzerland, a Swiss assembly area, and understand like how that is, like what can we make to that quality.
Yeah. So I was saying to Mick that I'm actually very interested to hear your answer on this last question, because of what you said, like watches isn't really where you've come from or your thing as much. But so apart from your own designs and your own watches, what would be your favorite watch brand or design or watch that you might have, like you look at and go, I wish I'd designed that?
Oh, I mean, I don't get design envy quite like that, like because we've done so many designs, and like I feel like it would be unfair. I mean, the Studio Underdog stuff I think is really cool, and I love them for what they are that's different from us. Like they take a more conventional kind of watch face and really like energize it in a way that I found really surprising when they first came out. And like once you've seen the Studio Underdog watches, it's almost like a whole new form. You're like, it's obvious. Like, why didn't anyone do that before? But Rich to actually sort of design that and create that's really impressive. And that's something that I guess I acknowledge that I couldn't do. Like, I can't take that sort of conventional watch form and update it and make it look fresh. Like, I think that is a real skill because, like I say, it's so hard to sort of break out of those sort of conventional frameworks. I guess the other thing I'd say though, so I mentioned it briefly before, I did evening classes in watchmaking, which really meant mechanical watch repair over here. And so I've got a real appreciation for vintage watches that came out of that. And I guess some of the brands that I'm really strong on from that are like Jaeger-LeCoultre from the mid-20th century. I think they did some really interesting, creative things that, like brands today just wouldn't do in the sort of 50s.
So, and to finish off, I guess if you can give us a hint, what's next for Mr. Jones? Can you give us an insight into anything?
I can. I was like, before we started this call, I showed you already, so you know what's coming. But we're for the first time in like almost, I think, 10 years, updating our case design, like our core case design. So I'll give you the sneak peek, never before seen on the internet. This is going to be our new case. So I'll show it alongside this is like existing case design.
That.
And like when I mentioned this before, we were talking about it a bit. So our existing case design has quite a gap between the edge of the case and the straps. And again, that's something that kind of came from me looking at vintage watches, and I kind of like that look, that sort of elongated lug look. But I know there are really strong opinions about it and strong feelings against it. Dean, you mentioned that's something that's particularly like a bugbear for you.
I'm looking forward to the change.
So, like we started doing last year the sort of wind up watch fairs in America, and so through that I met like a lot of customers face to face, which in a way that I hadn't for a while. Like I don't regularly work in the shop and kind of interact with the customers and talk stuff through, and it cropped up a number of times, and we discussed it internally, like in the company, and it just felt wrong that people held really strong opinions about our cases. Like we're not the watch company that sells on the design of the watch case. We're the company that sells on the design of the watch face. So there was some like mismatch going on there if we had a really specific design of case. So if I'm honest, the new case design is really, in a way, just designed to blend into the background a bit more and to sort of highlight the important part for us, which is the design of the face. The diameter and everything is still the same. The diameter of the glass is the same. So from our production point of view, it's basically the same thing. It's just we've really reduced the sort of, I guess, the fussiness a bit of the lugs and lost that sort of big gap between the edge of the case and the strap.
Fantastic.
I like it. It definitely looks better.
I'll pick you one up next year when I go over, Dino. Don't worry. Well, Crispin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, you've been so generous with your time. We really appreciate it. I thought I had an insight into Mr. Jones watches. I've got an even greater one now, which was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope we'll speak to you again in the future. And I'd like to say, I'm absolutely honoured. Thank you so much indeed.
You've made him a happy man.
You're welcome. Like, thanks for having me, and I hope it was an interesting insight.
Oh, absolutely.